I found out my husband has been secretly supporting his ex-wife for years, and now he's telling me he'll take everything we own and move in with her if I don't support their friendship. When I first stumbled upon the bank statement, I thought it had to be a mistake. Jason, 44M, and I had a joint savings account, one where we'd agreed to deposit a portion of our income every month toward our future. So when I found several large transfers under his name going out to someone I didn't recognize, my stomach sank. The name on the account was vague, just initials, but a quick online search confirmed my worst suspicion. It was his ex-wife, Melanie, 42F. He'd been quietly funneling money to her for years. I sat in our living room that night, the statement still clenched in my hand as I waited for him to come home. I could barely think straight. This wasn't just some casual oversight. He'd been hiding this from me, going behind my back for who knew how long, all to support a woman he'd left behind years ago. When he finally walked in, looking tired and surprised to see me waiting, I wasted no time. "Jason, we need to talk." "Now." He stopped in his tracks, a wary look crossing his face. "Kara, 39F, what's going on?" I held up the statement, unable to keep the hurt and anger out of my voice. "Explain this, Jason. Why are you sending money to Melanie?" For a split second, a look of panic flickered across his face, but he quickly smoothed it over, trying to act casual. "Kara, it's nothing. Just a little support here and there. She's had a rough time." "A little support," I echoed, my voice trembling. "Jason, these aren't small amounts. This has been going on for years. Why didn't you tell me?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck as if I was being unreasonable. "Because I knew you wouldn't understand. She's been through a lot since the divorce, and I felt responsible. We were together for a long time, and she has no one else." My mind reeled. Responsible? Jason, you're married to me now. How can you keep this kind of secret from me? You've been taking money out of our savings account, our future, without telling me anything. He shrugged, as if that should have been obvious. "It's not like I'm neglecting us, Kara. We have enough. I didn't think it was necessary to drag you into something that doesn't concern you." "Doesn't concern me?" I could barely contain the anger and disbelief coursing through me. "I'm your wife. This absolutely concerns me. Do you understand how much you've taken? Do you realize how it feels to know you've been hiding this from me?" He crossed his arms, an exasperated look on his face. "Kara, you're blowing this out of proportion. Melanie and I are just friends, and I've been helping her because I care about her well-being. I thought you'd be more understanding." "Understanding?" I repeated, incredulous. "Jason, this isn't about you being generous. You've lied to me, and now I'm supposed to be okay with it." He took a deep breath, his expression turning cold. "Kara, I'm going to be honest with you. Melanie is important to me. We may not be together, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to abandon her. And if you can't accept that, maybe we need to reevaluate this marriage." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Reevaluate our marriage? Are you serious?" "Yes, I am," he replied, his voice even, almost detached. "I've told you what's happening, and now you need to decide if you can live with it. Because I'm not going to cut her out of my life just because it makes you uncomfortable." The words left me stunned, like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. "So that's it? You're willing to throw away everything we built because you'd rather support her than be honest with me?" He sighed again, this time with an edge of irritation. "Kara, I'm not throwing anything away. But if you keep pushing me, you'll leave me no choice. I'm tired of having to justify this to you. If you can't support my friendship with her, then maybe we need to rethink what we're doing here." I stared at him, trying to comprehend the sheer audacity of what he was saying. Are you threatening me, Jason? Threatening to take everything and leave me because I don't want you lying to me?" He didn't answer right away, but his silence spoke volumes. Finally, he looked at me, a steely resolve in his eyes. "Yes, Kara. If that's what it comes to, I'll leave. I'll move in with her, take what's mine, and you can keep whatever's left. Because I'm not going to live in a marriage where I have to constantly defend my choices." I felt my stomach twist, a deep ache spreading through my chest as the reality of his words settled over me. "So you'd rather be with her? Is that what you're saying?" He didn't flinch, his expression remaining cold and distant. "If you can't accept our friendship, then maybe that's what's best for everyone involved." The anger, betrayal, and disbelief bubbled up inside me, threatening to spill over. I can't believe this. After everything we've been through, you choose her over me. Kara, it's not about choosing, he replied, frustration lacing his voice. It's about understanding. Melody was there for me during some of the hardest years of my life, and I'm not just going to drop her because you're insecure. The words stung, and I fought to hold back the hurt that threatened to overwhelm me. Insecure. You're calling me insecure for wanting honesty in our marriage? For wanting you to choose me over a woman you left years ago? He shook his head, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Kara, I didn't want it to come to this. But if you're going to make me choose, I'll walk away. Melanie and I may be friends, but I know she respects me. She doesn't try to control my decisions or question my loyalty. The finality in his words left me numb. It was clear that he'd made his choice, that I was no longer the person he felt any loyalty to. I couldn't believe how quickly he was willing to dismiss everything we'd built, all for a woman he hadn't been married to for years. But in that moment, as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't let myself stay in a marriage where I was constantly questioning his loyalty, where I was second to a ghost from his past. Taking a shaky breath, I met his gaze, the resolve in my voice surprising even me. If that's how you feel, Jason, then maybe we do need to reevaluate this marriage. Because I deserve someone who values honesty and respect, someone who puts me first. He looked at me, the faintest hint of surprise flashing across his face. But it was quickly replaced by that same indifference, as if he'd already checked out, already moved on in his mind. Fine, he said, his tone devoid of any warmth. If that's what you want, then we'll make it happen. I'll get my things and we'll sort out the rest. But don't expect me to come back and beg. I've made my peace with this. I nodded, a mix of heartbreak and relief flooding through me. Then go. Take what you need and go to her, if that's what you want. But don't expect me to sit around and wait for you to realize you made a mistake. Without another word, he walked past me, heading toward the bedroom to gather his things. I stood there, watching him with a strange sense of detachment, as if I was observing someone else's life unraveling. The man I'd married, the person I thought I'd spend my life with, had made his decision, and as painful as it was, I couldn't bring myself to try to change his mind. As he packed and left, I felt the emptiness settle over me, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. But beneath that heartbreak, there was a small, stubborn spark of strength, a resolve to rebuild, to find a life that didn't depend on his approval or his loyalty. When he finally walked out the door, leaving me standing alone in our home, I knew it would be hard, that the days ahead would be filled with hurt and anger. But I also knew that I would be okay, that I deserved a love that didn't come with ultimatums or betrayals, one built on trust and respect. And in that moment, as the door closed behind him, I felt a strange, fierce determination take root. This was the end of one chapter, yes, but it was also the beginning of something new, something I would create on my own terms. The day after Jason left, I felt like I was moving through fog. Every corner of the house, every shared item, even the familiar scent of his cologne lingering in the closet reminded me of what had just shattered. I tried to focus on practical things, packing up his remaining clothes, setting aside our shared financial documents for the inevitable discussion about splitting assets. But every task felt like a painful reminder of how he'd chosen someone else over the life we'd built together. A few days passed before I felt steady enough to start talking to friends. When I finally reached out to Lauren, my closest friend, she listened in stunned silence as I recounted everything. The secret financial support, the ultimatum he'd thrown at me to accept his friendship with Melanie or risk losing everything, we covered it all in a single emotional call. Kara, Lauren finally said, her voice thick with emotion, I don't know how he even thought you'd be okay with that. He's been lying to you for years, yet he expects you to support him while he supports her. How could he justify any of this? I shook my head, exhausted. I don't know, Lauren. He made it sound like I was the unreasonable one, that somehow I was the problem because I couldn't just accept it. She sighed, her frustration matching my own. That's classic manipulation. He couldn't face what he was doing, so he turned it on you. You deserve so much better than this, Kara. I hope you know that. Hearing her say it out loud was a comfort, but it didn't erase the sting. I'd given Jason everything, and he'd chosen someone who wasn't even a part of his life anymore, at least not in the way I thought. Lauren insisted on coming over, and for the first time in days, I accepted company. She showed up with food and a bottle of wine, and together, we unpacked the reality of what had happened. "Look," she said as she poured us both a generous glass, "this might be hard to hear, but maybe this is your chance to start fresh. Without him, you've always been the one making sacrifices, Kara. Maybe it's time you finally live for yourself." I took a sip, mulling over her words. It wasn't that I hadn't considered it, but the idea of starting over was daunting. Still, as I sat there with Lauren, surrounded by warmth and support, I realized that she was right. I'd built a life with Jason, but it didn't mean that I couldn't build a better one on my own terms. In the weeks that followed, I began reclaiming parts of myself I'd set aside over the years. Jason's absence opened up a space in my life that I hadn't known I needed, a space to reflect, to find strength I hadn't realized I possessed. I filled my time with things I loved but had long neglected: painting, hiking, even volunteering at a local animal shelter. Each day brought a renewed sense of independence, a reminder that my life wasn't defined by him or his betrayal. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old papers, I found our wedding album tucked in the back of a drawer. For a moment, I debated throwing it away, wanting to erase every reminder of the life I thought we'd had together. But instead, I sat down with it, opening it slowly, letting the memories wash over me. I looked at our smiling faces, the promises we'd made, the life we planned, and as painful as it was, I felt a strange sense of closure settle over me. This was part of my story, yes, but it didn't define my future. Not long after, Jason finally reached out to discuss our financial arrangements. He'd been staying with Melanie, and from the tone of his messages, he seemed eager to finalize everything. I felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger that he'd moved on so easily, yet relief that I'd soon be able to put this chapter behind me. We met in a quiet cafe to discuss the logistics, and seeing him again brought back a wave of emotions. He looked as put together as ever, but there was a faint defensiveness in his eyes, as if he knew exactly what he'd done and was determined to ignore it. "Kara," he began, his tone businesslike, "I think we can keep this simple. We'll split everything down the middle, and we'll both walk away with what we came into the marriage with." I took a deep breath, keeping my tone calm. "Fine, but there's something I need you to understand, Jason. You lied to me for years, and you took money from our savings, our future, to give to someone you'd already left behind. That's not something I can just walk away from without feeling betrayed." He looked down, his face unreadable. "I'm not trying to make excuses, Kara, but you have to understand. Melanie was struggling, and I felt responsible for her. You knew that I had a history with her, and I didn't think it was fair to leave her with nothing." "Fair?" I echoed, struggling to keep my composure. "Do you realize how it felt to find out you've been hiding this? That you kept something so huge from me?" He shifted uncomfortably, still refusing to meet my gaze. "I never wanted it to hurt you. I didn't think you'd understand." I let out a bitter laugh. "Of course I wouldn't understand, Jason. I married you because I thought we were building a future together, not that you'd be building one with her behind my back." He sighed, looking away. "I'm sorry, Kara, but maybe it's better this way. We both want different things." The finality of his words struck me, and I realized that he was right. We did want different things. He wanted a life entangled in the past, while I was ready to step into a future free from the weight of his secrets and lies. As we wrapped up the paperwork and parted ways, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. The man I'd married was a stranger, someone who had chosen loyalty to an old relationship over honesty with me. But that was his burden to bear now, not mine. Walking back to my apartment, I felt a strange mixture of pain and hope. Pain for the life I'd thought I had, and hope for the one I was beginning to create. I hadn't chosen this path, but I knew that I had the strength to walk it, no matter how hard it might be. That night, I reached out to Lauren and some other friends, letting them know I was ready to start moving forward. We gathered at my apartment, toasting to new beginnings and filling the space with laughter and warmth. For the first time since Jason had left, I felt at home again, surrounded by people who truly valued and supported me. As the evening wound down, Lauren pulled me aside, a soft smile on her face. "You know, Kara, I think this is the best thing that could have happened for you. He may have broken your heart, but you're stronger than he'll ever be." I hugged her, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within me. Jason's betrayal had hurt, but it had also shown me that I was capable of so much more than I'd ever given myself credit for. I wasn't defined by his choices or his lies. I was defined by my strength, my resilience, and my ability to move forward. And as I looked around at the people who had stood by me, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following that final meeting with Jason were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. The relief of severing ties with him, while liberating, left behind an ache that I hadn't anticipated. It was strange to find myself alone, truly alone, after years of planning my life with someone who'd proven himself unworthy of that trust. But the ache was tempered by a sense of empowerment, a fierce determination to reclaim my life and make it my own. One evening, as I was sorting through the last of our shared belongings, I stumbled across a box filled with keepsakes from our early days together. Ticket stubs, love notes, small trinkets from vacations we'd taken. I found myself staring at them, trying to reconcile the man I'd loved with the man who had lied to me for so long. I felt a wave of sadness, but also a clarity. These memories were reminders of a time when I had loved openly and without reservation, and I wasn't going to let his betrayal change that part of myself. The next day, I called Amelia, who'd been my rock throughout the breakup. "Do you want to come over and help me clear out some old memories?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She laughed. "Kara, I thought you'd never ask. I'll be over in 20. True to her word, she showed up with coffee and a few extra garbage bags. We spent hours going through everything: clothes, souvenirs, random odds and ends. And by the time we were done, we had several bags ready to be donated or thrown away. "You're really doing this," Amelia said, admiration clear in her eyes. "It takes a lot to let go like this. But you're building something new, and it's incredible." I felt a surge of pride, her words sinking in as I looked around at the cleared space, the now empty shelves and drawers. "Yeah, I guess I am. It's about time I make room for my own life, right?" She nodded. "Absolutely. And speaking of which," she reached into her bag and handed me a brochure. "I thought maybe you'd like to join me on a little getaway. It's a weekend retreat focused on reconnecting with yourself. Yoga, meditation, even some art therapy workshops. Could be exactly what you need." I took the brochure, flipping through it. The idea intrigued me. A weekend away completely dedicated to healing and focusing on myself. It was something I hadn't allowed myself to even consider in years, always prioritizing others' needs before my own. But now, the timing felt perfect. "That sounds amazing," I said, looking up at her with a genuine smile. "Count me in." The retreat turned out to be exactly what I needed. Nestled in a quiet area surrounded by mountains and trees, the weekend was a blend of solitude and connection, of reflection and growth. I met people from all walks of life, each there for their own reasons, and we shared stories, laughter, and tears as we worked through the baggage we'd brought with us. The art therapy workshops were particularly meaningful for me, allowing me to express emotions I hadn't even realized I was holding on to. Each stroke of paint felt like shedding a layer of the past, creating something new and beautiful from the remnants of what had been. One afternoon, as I was painting alone, a woman named Claire joined me. She was in her early 40s, with a warm smile and a quiet presence that put me at ease immediately. We crossed paths a few times during the retreat, exchanging small talk, but this was the first time we'd really connected. "Mind if I sit with you?" she asked, gesturing to the empty seat beside me. "Of course," I replied, smiling. We painted in companionable silence for a while, and then she spoke, her voice soft. "It seems like you're working through something deep. I don't mean to pry, but sometimes sharing helps." I hesitated, but something about her gentle presence made me want to open up. I told her about Jason, about the betrayal, the lies, and the sense of loss that had lingered even after I knew it was over. Claire listened, nodding, her expression understanding. "It's hard to start over after something like that. You invest so much of yourself into another person, and when it falls apart, it's like losing a piece of who you are." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "Exactly. I keep wondering if I'll ever feel like myself again, like the person I was before all of this." She smiled gently. "You will, but it won't be the same version of you. It'll be a stronger, wiser version, someone who's been through the fire and come out the other side. And that's a powerful thing, Kara." Her words stayed with me throughout the rest of the retreat, and by the time I returned home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let Jason's betrayal define me. I was going to build a life that was mine, filled with things that brought me joy, growth, and peace. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into this new chapter with a determination I hadn't known I possessed. I took up a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to try but had put off in favor of Jason's interests. Each session was messy and imperfect, but I found a thrill in creating something from scratch, watching the clay take shape beneath my hands. There was something healing in the process, a reminder that I could mold my life in the same way, imperfect but completely my own. One evening, as I was leaving class, I ran into Ethan, 40M, an old friend from college I hadn't seen in years. We'd been part of the same friend group back then, but life had taken us in different directions. We chatted for a bit, catching up, and he invited me to join him and some friends for dinner that weekend. "Only if you're up for it," he added, giving me a friendly smile. "It'd be great to reconnect." I agreed, and that Saturday, I found myself sitting around a cozy table with Ethan and a few other friends from those college days. The conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and shared memories. It felt good to be around people who'd known me before Jason, before everything had become so complicated. It reminded me of who I was outside of that relationship, of the life I'd put on hold for too long. After dinner, Ethan and I stayed behind to chat, reminiscing about our college years and the plans we'd once had. As we laughed over old stories, I felt a familiar spark, one that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. "It's really good to see you again, Kara," he said, his tone genuine. "You seem different, stronger maybe. Like you've come through something tough and found yourself on the other side." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I think I have. It's been a long journey, but I'm starting to feel like myself again." He looked at me thoughtfully, his eyes warm. "Well, I'd love to be part of this new chapter, if you're open to it." There was a sincerity in his voice, a kindness that I hadn't felt in a long time, and for the first time since the breakup, I felt ready to explore new connections, to let people in without fear. As we walked out of the restaurant, I felt a lightness that had been missing for too long. I was no longer defined by Jason's betrayal or the heartbreak he'd left behind. I was moving forward, piece by piece, creating a life that was truly my own. In the months that followed, I continued to nurture these new friendships and hobbies, each day a step further away from the pain and closer to the person I wanted to be. And with each step, I found myself more grateful, more hopeful, and more alive than I'd ever been before. The transformation in my life over the next few months felt like a slow but steady dawn breaking after a long, dark night. I was discovering a version of myself I hadn't seen in years. A woman who made her own choices, who pursued things that brought her joy without hesitation. Pottery, painting, spending weekends volunteering, reconnecting with old friends. Each day felt like another brick added to the new foundation I was building. And slowly, the wound from Jason's betrayal began to scar over, no longer the sharp, open pain it once was. Ethan and I continued to spend time together, our friendship deepening into something richer and more meaningful. We kept it light, taking things one step at a time, and I felt a refreshing lack of pressure or expectation from him. He knew my story, and he understood where I was coming from. We go on casual outings to art shows or for long walks through the city, and in his easy laughter and genuine warmth, I found myself slowly letting go of my fears. One evening, after we'd gone out to dinner, Ethan and I ended up on a bench by the river, watching the city lights reflect off the water. He was telling me about a recent backpacking trip he'd taken through South America, his eyes lighting up as he described the landscapes and the people he'd met. "It was freeing," he said, his gaze thoughtful as he looked out over the water. "I think everyone should travel alone at least once. It reminds you of who you are without anyone else's expectations or assumptions." I realized a lot about myself on that trip. I smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. "I feel like I'm just starting that journey," I admitted, "not traveling, but getting to know myself without Jason, without anyone's expectations but my own." He looked over at me, his expression warm. "You're doing an amazing job, Kara. I can see it in you. You're stronger, more confident. And it's inspiring, honestly." His words struck a chord, and for a moment, I felt vulnerable in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be in a long time. "It's not easy," I said softly, "but I think I think I'm finally seeing the light at the end of it. There's a freedom in knowing that I can move forward without letting the past define me. Ethan reached over, gently taking my hand. I'm glad you're letting yourself see that. And if you need someone by your side while you keep finding that freedom, well, I'd be honored to be part of it. The warmth of his hand in mine felt grounding, like an anchor in a world that had been unsteady for so long. We sat there in silence, the weight of his words settling over me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to open up to someone new, to let myself explore a connection without the ghosts of my past clouding my judgment. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan and I became closer, our friendship evolving into something real and grounded. He was patient, never pressing me for more than I was ready to give, and I found myself trusting him in ways I hadn't trusted anyone since Jason. He encouraged my passions, celebrated my small wins, and reminded me of the joy in life's simplest moments. Together, we explored new parts of the city, trying out cozy little cafes, visiting art installations, and even taking a pottery class together. A fun but chaotic experience that left us covered in clay and laughing uncontrollably. One Saturday morning, I joined Ethan and some mutual friends for a hiking trip to a nearby mountain trail. Hiking had always been something Jason and I talked about, but never actually did, and I'd almost forgotten how refreshing it felt to be surrounded by nature. We spent hours winding up the trail, the air filled with the scent of pine trees and wildflowers, the only sounds those of laughter and the occasional chirp of a bird. At the peak, we stopped to take in the view, a sweeping panorama of green valleys and blue skies stretching as far as the eye could see. Standing there, breathing in the crisp mountain air, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. It was the peace of knowing that I'd come out the other side of something dark and difficult, and I'd done it on my own terms. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the mountains, Ethan took my hand, pulling me aside from the group. He looked at me, his expression serious but tender. "Kara," he began, his voice soft, "I just want to say that being with you these past few months has been more than I could have ever hoped for. I know you're still healing, still finding your way, but I'm here for all of it. No expectations, no pressure, just support." I felt a lump in my throat, his sincerity breaking through the last of my defenses. "Thank you, Ethan," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know where I'm going or what's next, but having you with me, it's made all the difference." He pulled me into a hug, holding me close as the sun dipped lower on the horizon. In his embrace, I felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, I could build something new, something that was truly mine. Over the following months, my life blossomed. I took on new projects at work, gaining recognition for my dedication and leadership, and even earned a promotion that had me overseeing a team. My pottery hobby grew into a small side project, and with Ethan's encouragement, I started selling pieces at local art fairs. People were drawn to the story behind each piece, the narrative of healing and resilience that had shaped my journey. It felt surreal, sharing this part of myself with the world and receiving so much support in return. One evening, as I was preparing for another art fair, I received an unexpected email from Melanie. The subject line read simply, "I owe you an apology." Against my better judgment, I opened it, feeling a mix of curiosity and trepidation. In the email, she explained how she'd relied on Jason's support over the years but hadn't known the full extent of his dishonesty with me. She acknowledged that what they'd done was wrong, that Jason should have been transparent from the beginning. She ended the email with a sincere apology, saying she wished me peace and happiness. I sat back, processing her words. The anger and hurt were still there, but her apology felt genuine. I wasn't sure if it changed anything, but it felt like the last piece of closure I needed. I replied with a brief but polite acknowledgement, letting her know that while forgiveness was still a journey, I appreciated her words. That night, I shared the email with Ethan, who listened quietly, his hand resting comfortingly on mine. "Do you feel any different?" he asked gently. I thought about it, then nodded. "Yes, I do. I think I'm finally free of it all. She can have him. They can have whatever they need from each other. I'm ready to move forward with no strings to the past." Ethan smiled, pulling me close. "Then here's to the future. Your future, Kara. One that's entirely yours." As the months turned into a year, I continued to thrive, my life richer and more fulfilled than I'd ever thought possible. I found joy in my work, my art, my friendships, and the steady, genuine love I was building with Ethan. I realized that Jason's betrayal had been painful, yes, but it had also been the catalyst for a transformation I never would have experienced otherwise. Standing in my booth at a bustling art fair, surrounded by my creations and people who supported me, I felt a deep, unwavering peace. This was my life, crafted from pain, resilience, and hope, and it was more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. Ethan appeared by my side, smiling as he placed his hand in mine. And as I looked around at everything I'd built, I knew, without a doubt, that I had truly, finally moved on. The past was behind me, but it had made me stronger. And the future was mine to create, one meaningful, joyful moment at a time. A year after I'd closed the door on my life with Jason, I was standing on the brink of a new chapter, one that felt like it belonged wholly to me. My pottery work was starting to gain recognition, and my small collection had even been accepted into a local gallery. A dream I'd never even thought to imagine before. Each piece told part of my story, a tangible reminder of resilience, growth, and the beauty that had come from rebuilding. The gallery opening night felt like a culmination of everything I'd worked toward. Friends, family, and even some familiar faces from my pottery class and recent art fairs came out to show their support. Standing in the center of that room, surrounded by my work and the people who'd been with me every step of the way, I felt a sense of belonging and pride I hadn't known I could feel. Ethan was by my side, his arm around me as he beamed with pride. "Look around, Kara," he whispered, leaning close. "You did all of this. You turned everything you went through into something beautiful, something that's yours." I looked at him, grateful beyond words. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, giving his hand a squeeze. "You helped me see that there was more beyond the pain, more to life than I ever knew." His eyes softened. "You would have found it on your own. I'm just lucky to be a part of it." As the night wore on, I mingled with guests, sharing stories behind each piece and watching as they resonated with people in ways I hadn't expected. The experience felt surreal, like the final step in letting go of the person I'd been with Jason and fully embracing the person I was becoming. This was a life that was built on my own terms, with my own efforts, and that knowledge was more freeing than anything I'd experienced. At one point, I caught sight of Melanie in the crowd, standing off to the side. My heart skipped a beat, the past briefly brushing up against the present. She looked hesitant, clearly unsure if she should approach. But after everything, I felt nothing but peace, as if that chapter had already been closed and she was just another person in the crowd. I gave her a small nod, acknowledging her presence. She seemed to understand, offering a faint smile before disappearing into the sea of faces. I realized then that I had truly moved past it all. There were no lingering threads or unresolved feelings, only the future ahead of me. As the event wound down, Ethan and I slipped outside for a quiet moment. The evening air was crisp, the city lights glowing softly against the dark sky. I leaned against the railing, looking out over the city that had become my home in every sense of the word. "Kara," he began, his tone serious but warm, "I have to ask, what's next for you? You've accomplished so much, but I know you're not done yet." I thought about it, smiling as I considered his question. "I don't know exactly, but I feel ready for whatever comes next. Maybe I'll open my own studio, maybe I'll teach, or maybe I'll keep creating and see where it takes me. For the first time, I don't feel like I have to know every detail. I just have to keep going." He reached for my hand, his expression thoughtful. "And maybe I could be part of it." I looked at him, feeling a warmth and certainty I hadn't known was possible. "Yes," I replied softly. "I'd like that more than anything." A few months later, as spring bloomed across the city, Ethan and I found a cozy apartment to share, a place that felt like a fresh beginning for both of us. We filled it with art, laughter, and memories that were ours alone. Each day was filled with small moments of joy, reminders of the life I'd fought to build. And as the seasons changed, I took on new challenges, diving deeper into my work and exploring new artistic paths. I volunteered to teach pottery classes at a local community center, guiding others as they explored the joy of creation. Seeing their excitement, their pride as they molded raw clay into something beautiful, reminded me of my own journey and how far I'd come. One evening, after class, a student approached me, her hands still covered in clay. "You know," she said, smiling, "you have this way of making people believe they can create anything. It's inspiring." Her words struck a deep chord, and I felt a quiet pride well up inside me. I was living a life that felt true, one that encouraged others to find beauty in their own resilience and creativity. I was exactly where I was meant to be. And so, with each new day, I'd embraced the life I'd built from the ground up. My past was no longer a weight. It was a stepping stone that had led me here to a place of freedom, fulfillment, and love. The woman I was now had scars, yes, but those scars had only made me stronger. They were part of the story, but they didn't define the ending. The ending was mine to create, one day at a time, with each sunrise bringing a new opportunity to live fully and fearlessly. And as I stood in my studio, hands in clay, surrounded by the art that had become my purpose and the people who were my chosen family, I knew without a doubt that this was my life. A life built on courage, love, and the unwavering belief that even the darkest chapters could lead to something beautiful.